How did the latchkey generation become overprotective helicopter parents? The media the world over started doing stories about how there's a pedo on every street corner just waiting to kidnap and rape little boys and girls. Overcorrecting the issue they had with their childhood. They wanted their parents to be around more. They end up around way too much. The 24-hour news cycle operating on, if it bleeds it leads, that every night churns every bad story. In America, every living room across the nation. Things that prior generations heard about once in a generation were suddenly being aired every single evening with a new story every night. For 20 years straight. Statistically, the world is safer than it ever was before. But social media and 24-hour news tells us children are in constant danger. So parents became overprotective. It is something I battle against myself. Make myself kick the kids outside. I have first-hand knowledge about this. In the 80s and 90s there was a lot of press about stranger abductions of children and murders and satanic plots to sacrifice children. Young adults who had children in the 90s were raised on these fears that some random person was going to kidnap and kill their child. If you are constantly bombarded by this on pseudo news shows, you take to believing it. Subsequent generations have been raised by such parenting style and now consider it normal and standard, to the point that if you don't walk your kid to the bus stop or be there to walk them home, you are being a neglectful parent. I have other ideas about how this has fundamentally changed our young people, but I'm not sure people would believe me or take me seriously about it. Source: I have family that has suffered because of this behavior. The fact that they were latchkey kids is likely why they are overprotective. They wanted their parents around and they weren't. They are not repeating that mistake. On the other hand, they are overcorrecting the mistake in the process. My cousin and I were both raised free range, out until the street lights came on. One day we were at a family cookout and he was literally following his daughter as she was walking around with his arms out around her. I couldn't believe it. I had twin boys who were the same age. I looked for them and one of them was about 20 feet up in tree. I caught sight of the other one just as he was falling off the flood wall and into a nearby creek. I have no idea how we turned out so differently. Gen X here. We're not helicopter parents, but we also know it's kinda surprising we made it through. That being said, I'm a criminal defense attorney, and CPS and the constables get called way too easily these days. Someone in my neighborhood called the constables 'cause a 10-year-old was riding his bike at the neighborhood playground without an adult, and the constables turned out. Rather than saying, "It's a kid riding a bike. What's wrong with you?" Quote, "Honestly, don't think it's Gen X. Most of my cohort is like, why are people losing their minds about kids doing stuff we always did?" But I will acknowledge, I don't want CPS and law enforcement in my business. So my kids do have less free ranging than I did. Social media. Latchkey Gen Xer checking in. I grew up playing outside. Walked, biked and skateboarded everywhere well into the night. This was inner city SoCal in the 70s, 80s. We had the occasional hooker or gangbanger around, but everyone generally kept to themselves and stayed in their own worlds. Times have changed and perhaps we're all over-indexing on the helicopter parenting part, 'cause that street corner, neighborhood, mall was never this bad, dangerous, sketchy when I was growing up. It seems all of those things to worry about with kids, pedos, kidnappers, psychos, druggies, dealers just seems to have blossomed over those years. As others have said, it doesn't help that the media is all bad all the time and many cities are just letting crime happen as policy. My kids are in their early 20s and the typical response to me now is, okay boomer FK off it'll be fine. I was born in the 80s to a crackhead. I had a very free childhood, don't know how else to describe it. I have to be conscientious to not be helicopter mom. I have to give myself pep talks that minor injuries and learning to deal with peers is part of life. And that if I'm too overbearing they won't be normal kids or adults. I would actually bet it was due to lobbying by insurance companies or highly motivated helicopter humans. I remember most of us thought that paranoid people were pushing non-stop regulations. But nobody knew many paranoid people. Then once a regulation gets passed it eventually gets normalized. Most people wore seatbelts. But I remember most people also getting irritated by them becoming mandatory. Everyone started worrying about being seen as a bad parent because a vocal minority were yelling at anyone they could catch with a slightly misdone child car seat. Meanwhile we all rode in the back of trucks. So many PSAs. I think it was all fear of being attacked for not complying. That eventually got normalized by cognitive dissonance. The Adam Walsh TV miniseries was the only thing I remember really bothering people. Well, that and the Richard Ramirez killings. I lived in SoCal. I don't think it was grassroots at all. I think it was astroturfed. I raised my millennial son pretty free range and got a lot of judgment from some parents. Fortunately, there were enough like-minded parents that the kids were pretty much always in a pack. I honestly don't know anyone that's actually as much of a helicopter parent as the memes and social media commentary seem to portray. Most of us in my friend group are kinda like our parents. Just a bit more reserved on it because people like to call CPS DCFS for anything these days and nobody wants that on their back. So many posts in our neighborhood group like, someone's 6-year-old is out on the front porch alone. Who do I call? And it's just a kid on their own porch in a gated yard with the screen door open so the parent can hear anything. And not some lost child like implied trust. I would love to just let my kids roam up and down the block and around to the library or whatever on their bikes without me also having to go along. But some busybody down the way is going to report it, so I refrain. Gen X had the "do you know where your children are?" PSA. Gen X is where the paranoia started. I've been told that women working outside the home and trusting childcare to daycares led people to distrust the outside world more. With the same tactics being used now. Pedo trafficking paranoia, aka stranger danger and satanic panic. No one is stalking Karens and their crotch goblins through Target or Walmart. That isn't how human trafficking works. Satan isn't real and no one in their right mind is performing rituals or bloodshed in his name. We deeply lack critical thinking skills and it is terrifying because then you end up with people who truly believe Taylor Swift drinks baby blood in exchange for hit records and celebrities of all walks or sacrificing children for adrenal excretion. The answer is in the question. It is a combination. The world got a little crazier, some driven by the fear-mongering of the media. We were the apathetic generation. Basically, we really do nor did not care what was said about us individually or what was generally going on around as long as it did not affect us personally. Did not affect us personally. Nothing more personal than your offspring. Many overcorrected, others went total hands-off. End of it all. Did we love you? Support you? Let you find your best you? If yes, it's a win. If no, get over yourself and quit bitchin'. Because, having once been a teenager, I know they are not to be trusted. I mean, you answered your own question. People mature. Those kids realized how unsafe what they were doing was and they overcorrected. I imagine the next generation who was raised with helicopter parents will be significantly less controlling.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.